Watching News at Prime, let's get into this conversation now. The South African Human Rights Commission has raised concerns about the state of public schools, especially in the Eastern Cape, Limpopo and KwaZulu-Natal provinces. The commission, that is, it complains about pit latrines, crumbling buildings and the use of asbestos structures in some classrooms after visiting over 150 schools ahead of the new academic year. Let's speak now to the Commissioner, that's Professor Tshepo Madlingozi. Good evening to you, Commissioner, and thank you very much for your time. Let's start with the goal of this National School Readiness Assessment. What did you set out to achieve?
Good evening, good evening to your viewers. The goal really is to assess the state of readiness of the schools in South Africa. Over the past few years, we've been receiving complaints from learners, from parents, from teachers, complaining really about the state of schooling. So what we did is that we conducted announced and many unannounced visits to schools to assess the infrastructure, scholar transport, school nutrition, and see whether everything is in line with realizing the right to basic education.
Yeah. And in your findings, you say there still is a major infrastructure crisis in 3 provinces. Which are these provinces? And importantly, what were your findings there in terms of infrastructure?
That finding cuts across all provinces, really. It's not specific provinces. It is a pervasive systemic issue. So what we mean by that is, number one, we see crumbling infrastructure, old classrooms, dilapidated classrooms, but we also have instances of buildings that have not been repaired after natural disasters. Some of the schools that we went to, you can still see asbestos in the roofing infrastructure, meaning the conditions are such that they pose a health hazard to learners. In some cases, we saw broken windows. So all of that, we say it does not only impinge on the right to education, it also poses risk to health and life of the learners.
Overcrowding and staff shortages is another major challenge. How severe is the issue?
It's very severe in some provinces. In some cases, we found 80 kids in a very small classroom. So there is a national framework in terms of teacher-learner ratio, but in about 5 provinces, we found that that has been exceeded. In some cases, schools tried to augment this by building mobile clinics, but that was not enough, where we saw a lot of overcrowding and therefore, not a conducive atmosphere for students to be getting their education.
You also touch on a matter that has gained, or should we say, that has made headlines in the last few months, and that's the matter surrounding undocumented nationals in the country, but in the schooling context. I want to read directly from your statement. You say, as far as undocumented learners, some schools admit them, but lack state funding and administrative support, straining resources. Give us a fuller picture of what you mean by this.
Yes, you'll recall that the Constitution is very, very clear that all children must receive education. It doesn't matter whether they're documented, undocumented, South African, not South African. The Bella Act consolidates that position to make it mandatory to register undocumented learners. I must say, in provinces such as Gauteng, Eastern Cape, and Limpopo, there were commendable efforts to register those learners, including migrant and asylum seekers. However, we did not see a consummate budget and provisions from the province, from the National Treasury to enable schools to be able to provide for those learners. So in some of the provinces, they complain to us to say, we want to comply with the law. We are complying with the law, but we are not getting support from a budget perspective.
You then sub-categorize the provinces according to the topics I'm about to read to you now, and I'll just read them out so that you can give us the context thereafter. You say, under best performing, this is Gauteng and the Western Cape. And then you move on to most concerning, Eastern Cape, Northwest, and Limpopo. Free State, Northern Cape, and Mpumalanga, moderate readiness, but recurring sanitation, security, and resource shortages. Let's talk about the best performers and the most concerning. What is the key differentiator there? What makes those that are best performing to maintain that, to sustain that best performance, whilst those that are most concerning, what is the most severe challenge there?
It comes down to three aspects. One, leadership, and by leadership we mean the role of the MECs, the HODs, but also district officials. So where there is proper leadership, where there is stability, where there's political willingness, we see a lot of improvements. But secondly, it has to do with budgeting, proper budgeting. It has to do with instances where there's no corruption and maladministration, but also instances where the budget is not returned to National Treasury because it has not been spent. So proper and efficient use of the budget becomes important. The third one is intergovernmental cooperation. You will know that schools rely on certain departments to provide holistic access to education, such as the Department of Public Works, SAHRC, and community policing when it comes to security. So in those provinces where there is proper intergovernmental cooperation, we see improvements.
Yeah.
Conversely, in provinces where there is lack of political will, where there is challenges with corruption and maladministration, where there is capacity challenges and the budget is sent back, and where there's no coordination between departments, we see a lot of challenges. So we are very, very clear in our reports to, one, recommend that there must be proper budgeting, enough resources given to provinces. We don't believe that provinces are getting enough resources to be able to do what they need to do. But also intergovernmental cooperation becomes very, very important. But as I said, ultimately, it is about political will. It is about the involvement of parents, civil society, but also trade unions. Trade unions need to come on board and play their role in ensuring that their members do what they're supposed to do.
Your conclusion is probably most telling, and I want to read it out, just a short line. South Africa's education system remains deeply unequal. As we conclude on that line, talk to us about whether there are any positives on the horizon, or the situation is likely to deepen.
Well, I'm Tshepo, so I am hopeful that there will be some improvements. Let me start by saying that today at our launch, we had officials from the Free State, from the Eastern Cape, from the Northwest, and from Gauteng at a very high level, which showed a spirit of cooperation, humility. All of them said, we appreciate your work. We don't disagree with your findings. They're factually based, and therefore we want to commit to working with you. So that's a sign of proper improvement, in a sense that departments are willing to cooperate with us. But secondly, there was a big improvement in terms of school nutrition. In about 85% of the schools that we monitored, we saw that there was school nutrition. So that is a positive. But we are still very concerned about austerity and budget cuts. We are still concerned about lack of intergovernmental cooperation. We're still concerned about the threats by some vigilante groups to stop students who don't have documentation from going to school. So all of that gives us a cause for concern. We will be meeting with the minister in December, and after that we'll be meeting with the portfolio committee on basic education, and we hope those two interventions will lead to improvements.
Tshepo Madlingozi, thank you very much for your time. He's a commissioner at the South African Human Rights Commission.